Hampton. I have a husband, Steve, who some of you have met. I have 2 teenage boys and 2 small fish. And we've just recently survived a house renovation. But it hasn't always been this way. Stuff has happened between growing up in the suburbs of West Essendon and now. There's been a little bit of magic, a little adventure in faraway places, and a little bit of living in the Aussie outback. To start off, my dad, well, he was also an engineer by trade. He was also a professional magician. He started this at the age of 12, performing in the local vaudeville theatre, and continued throughout his life. Even to this day, he's still doing some magic in progress clubs. So as we were all growing up, my brother and sister and I all got a chance to be the naughty clown assistant to the magic act. And we also got to help with doing the Punch and Judy puppet show as well. And it was always lots of fun. So you'd have all the children would be jumping up and down their seats and pointing out to that the naughty clown is doing something wrong and the naughty Mr. Punch. And it was always great fun to do. But also you'd have all the parents sort of around the back of the room, and be for a child's birthday party or something, they would be standing around, and usually you'd find that they ended up surprising themselves by enjoying it as well. So then so I finished uni, and I landed a job then at an environmental consultancy firm. Now, the interesting thing about this particular place was that they did environmental impact assessments for large mining companies, and quite a lot of that work was in Papua New Guinea. So I got to travel to this really amazing and beautiful country. So the work was often quite hard and in hot and humid conditions, but the memories are just irreplaceable. So you'd have flying around in helicopters over rugged terrain, and you'd be flying up gorges, and then a particular spot that helicopter pilots loved, and they'd just turn around the corner and then just hover in front of a massive waterfall. You'd be enthralled watching the bird of paradise displaying in their bizarre evening mating ritual. You'd be ended up walking through lush tropical forest and floating down rivers in dugout canoes, and also in one of the remote islands that I ended up going to, I was often followed around by a little band of children that just thought I was the most hilarious thing they'd ever seen, because a small white woman was something that they probably hadn't seen before, and it was just like I was wearing my clown costume. So then I met Steve, and we got married, and he then whisked me off to live in Laverton, which is in outback Western Australia. And so Laverton is a small town of 1,000 people, 360 kilometres northeast of Kalgoorlie. And in this town I got to be an environmental officer there, and I got to stomp around in 40-degree heat in the collecting seeds to then spread over and hope that they grow on the sterile mullock dumps that were left over from the Poseidon nickel boom. But also in a place like this, even though you'd think a very small town, you just couldn't get bored. Within a short time of moving there, I was the president of the art group, and then joined the mines rescue team, and because I was in that, I joined the local volunteer fire brigade as well. And also it was all very sociable. There'd be card nights and dinner parties, and one of the oddest things was just after I arrived there was walking up the hill to a formal dinner party in my ball dress. So then, after there, we moved to Mount Magnet, which was over to the west a bit, and a gold mining town. Then we moved down to Norseman. So if any of you have ever travelled across the Nullarbor to Perth, Norseman's about halfway between the South Australian border and Perth. And the best thing about Norseman was that Esperance was only 2 hours drive away. The worst thing was the flights. But anyway, and so then, by then my first son was born. We then moved to Perth, and the second son David was born, and then we moved back to my hometown of Melbourne. And since then, there's still been a little bit of magic. As the boys were growing up, we ended up, my dad and I still did like a magic show for the prep class, which was quite funny because you had some of the children had a little bit of trouble thinking of a mother and a naughty clown, and they just couldn't quite pick up the two. And one little girl came to me and said, Mrs. Gray, I think you're a bit too naughty. Anyway, so there's also been a little bit of adventure in on the occasional holiday. We're not planning to move back to any mining towns, but we hope there'll still be a little bit of magic and a lot more adventures in the future still to come.